After Path of Destruction, I didn't think you could get any better of a novel. When I heard that Rule of Two was written in 5 months and was a rush job, it made me initially worried. But at the same time, there were so many positive reviews of this book out there that I was a little intimidated to read it and review it. So I let it sit for years. We're pushing close to 2 years now since I've read Path of Destruction. And I found the hardcovers. Geeks Addict found me Path of Destruction. I found Rule of Two and Dynasty of Evil all in book club size. And then I got the audiobooks. Because, like with a lot of my Star Wars books, it just ended up getting shelved. And I re-listened to Path of Destruction. And then I just went into Rule of Two. And then later Dynasty of Evil, but we'll get to that. Rule of Two takes place immediately after Path of Destruction. Darth Bane has found Darth Xana, and they're leaving the planet when they run into Darvit, Xana's cousin. If you remember, he's Tomcat. And she's Rain. You remember that dumb story called Jedi vs. Sith? With the goofy cartoon art that was super violent? Well, this kind of changes the climax of Jedi vs. Sith, and I need to get into that, but I'll do that in a bit. Well, they have a confrontation. They leave. Flashes forward 10 years, and we have our story, which is Darth Xana is learning from Darth Bane, and a lot of interesting things happen. There isn't a plot, but there is a plot to Rule of Two. And that's because our main protagonists don't necessarily move the plot. It's really hard to explain. Our side characters do. Johan, General Hoth's apprentice, is knighted. He's the only Jedi that believes the Sith were not killed on Ruusan. They were not wiped out. There's still a Sith Master left. And over 10 years, he's the only one that thinks this. He becomes the ancestor of Chancellor Valorum from Phantom Menace. Another Valorum becomes his bodyguard while he becomes Chancellor. The Jedi sort of shift into what they are in the prequel trilogy, well, in Phantom Menace specifically. And we get a lot of that. And a lot of the plot is run by Johan. Meanwhile, Darth Xana and Darth Bane are manipulating things behind the scenes, which is what the Rule of Two is all about, and they're growing and becoming more powerful. Bane goes to the tomb of Frida Nad. If you don't know, he's from Tales of the Jedi, the Frida Nad uprising, and to find Frida Nad's holocron so he can become more powerful. He ends up being infested with orbalisks, which are these weird bugs that their shells can repel lightsabers, as well as their parasites that feed off of his dark side essence, but they give him strength. So he gets covered in these things and becomes really powerful, but at a cost. Meanwhile, Xana's cousin, Darvit, becomes a healer on Ruusan, and over time all of their plots intertwine with one another, which leads to a really fascinating, really awesome conclusion, which is, of course, a lightsaber duel between our two Sith and a group of Jedi. But, not all is what's seen. But it isn't going to end the way you think it is. Okay, it does, because the Sith can't, lose. So, yeah, Rule of Two is a very interesting book. Unlike Chuck Wendig, who speed wrote Aftermath and it turned out to be garbage, Rule of Two was a rush job, not by choice. basically Path of Destruction was supposed to be a one and done story from what I understand. But it was such a big seller that Lucasfilm decided that Rule of Two had to be done and it had to be released at a certain time. And so everyone rushed this book out. Drew Karpyshyn wrote it in 5 months. And of course, it has a little continuity error, which Path of Destruction had too. And that is that they don't really follow the conclusion of Jedi versus Sith. Githany isn't there when Xana severs Darvit's hand. So, yeah. That's like the only continuity error. That and Bane of the Sith is a little different. That's a Kevin J. Anderson story from Star Wars Gamer. They're a little different on how they play out, but that's more of perspective things. But this is specifically a character was there for one time and said character wasn't there another time. That's a little funky. But hey, it was a rushed job and it's a really solid book. The climax of the book I thought was going to just going to end with the lightsaber battle at the end, which is incredible. I can't express it enough how awesome it is to see both Bane and Xana with their lightsaber forms fighting all these Jedi. But I can't completely talk about it. That being said, it doesn't end there, and it goes for another couple chapters, and it wraps everything up in a nice bow. So, anyway, Rule of Two gets a 5 out of 5. Just an absolute fantastic book. It surpasses Path of Destruction. Even though Path of Destruction is a more straightforward plot where Bane is pushing the plot along, whereas in this, there's times where side characters are pushing the plot around, which is a little weird, but works for this story. And I really liked that it didn't try to be Path of Destruction. So, anyway, guys, have a nice day.